Yo, what's good, y'all? And this is a video that I wanted to make for a while, but I didn't really know how to make it. But now I think I do. So yeah, let's get into it, bro. Generational, a word that has a lot of different meanings in a lot of different ways depending on who you're talking to and what you're talking about. But when it comes to media, in any form of media, I feel like the definition always stays the same, but it gets confused with a lot of different things. Most people usually default to the same adjectives they use to describe different things. Like, for example, if something they don't like is mediocre or lackluster, they call it mid. Or if something they really like is just the best thing they've ever read, or at least conventionally good, they'll probably just slap the word peak on it. But for me personally, when there's something that I have a real connection to, that I can see a long lasting impact of, I tend to call that generational. And I'm not talking about in the sense of I play a game and it's really, really good and it's in my top 3. Like, for example, I love Hollow Knight to death. It's one of the best games I've ever played, but I'd never call it generational because it doesn't meet the criteria for it. Now you have your most obvious examples of generational things like Mario 64 or GTA, but these examples are mostly found within gaming. When you take a step out of that realm, I think it becomes much more personal because, of course, a timeless game will be played for many, many years to come as long as it holds up well to today's standards, regardless of any nostalgia factor or just a difference in charm compared to modern things. But when it comes to, I don't know, a good manga or a good anime or a good Western comic book or a cartoon or just TV show, the things that make that generational are much more intricate and just much more relatable. And in order to explain this to you in a way that you'll probably be able to understand, I'll just lay out my personal experiences. Now, I'll be honest with you, bro. I didn't really spawn into the normal things that you'd usually spawn into. Like, well, as a kid, when I was growing up, I didn't have Lion King on the VHS. I had Blackjack on the VHS. And I got lucky and I had Cowboy Bebop on the VHS. And my first exposure ever to Dragon Ball is me having Dragon Ball GT on the VHS, and then after the opening, it just like the tape would mess up and I couldn't even see anything that was going on. So for most of the day, my little ADHD brain was just playing Ultimate Spider-Man for the PS2 and just watching VHS tapes. But only one time where I woke up super early for some unknown reason, I decided to cut my TV on and I get to see absolute cinema in front of me. I got to see 4Kids. And at first I was like, whatever, bro. I don't really care too much. And then I tuned in a little bit more. And then I see Sonic on the screen. I'm like, wait, that nigga has more than 2 TV shows? I thought he was just mainly for games. And it's in the format of an anime. And I noticed that off the jump because when I'd watch Western cartoons on Cartoon Network, it'd have a completely different animation style. So I was able to differentiate Japanese animation from Western animation at an early age. But what really caught my attention with 4Kids wasn't even Sonic, as hyperfixated as I was. What I noticed immediately was Dragon Ball Z Kai. Now understand this, bro. My first ever exposure to Dragon Ball was Dragon Ball GT on a VHS tape that didn't even work. I didn't even know multiple versions of Dragon Ball existed at the time. Now naturally, I completed my rite of passage and I watched all of Z Kai up until the Cell Saga, because every time you'd watch Dragon Ball Z Kai on 4Kids, it'd stop at the Cell Saga for some unknown reason. I never once saw it air the Buu Saga, and I rewatched it like 12 times on 4Kids alone. But upon seeing this, I was immediately just locked into cable. Of course, I'd always watch Cartoon Network, right? But that was about all I'd watch, aside from stuff like Cubo occasionally, because, you know, broke nigga moments. Cartoon Network was always my bread and butter. If it wasn't like VHS tapes, it was definitely Cartoon Network. But where the floodgates truly got open, where my third eye immediately got open, is when one day I was like, bruh, I'm not finna go to sleep tonight. I don't really care what my mom says. And then I watched Cartoon Network for a very, 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 very long time. And I see Adult Swim. But I don't just see Adult Swim. My nigga, I see Toonami. And on that day, my friend, I transformed from Lil Nigga number 237 into canon. And that right there is what we call a true generational pipeline. Because let me explain to you the branches of this pipeline. On that fateful night, bro, not only did I just happen to stumble upon Toonami, bro, guess what was airing that night? Fooly Cooly. And let me tell you right now, watching Fooly Cooly as a conflicted little kid that always isolated himself does something to you. Now, me personally, bro, of course I wasn't unfamiliar to darker, more serious topics within the shows that I watched because I'd watched Cowboy Bebop before. But with Cowboy Bebop, of course I understood it and took it for what it was, but Fooly Cooly did it in such a more presentable way to me. And so with that, I clung to this anime like it was a lifeline, but most importantly, Fooly Cooly put me on to Japanese rock. And would you look at that? Another generational pipeline. And if you thought the floodgates were open from Dragon Ball, my third eye was open from this. Because something very, very, very important happened due to this. This led me to being put on to Soul Eater. Now, you'd think that watching Toonami and watching Fooly Cooly on there would just lead me to watching more Toonami and then eventually watching Soul Eater by proxy of that. But there's one big problem with that. The Xbox 360 and the Nintendo Wii. Now, I'm not gonna lie, bro. I was playing those to death, and a lot of the time, I'd end up missing out on Toonami just because I was playing those consoles a lot. So instead of giving up right then and there, I, of course, did more research on Soul Eater, and eventually, that led me to the Soul Eater manga. So, effectively, Soul Eater was my first manga ever. I didn't even know animes were adaptations of manga at the time. But to make a long story extremely short, Soul Eater quickly became like my favorite thing ever, and it still is my favorite manga ever right now. Because not only was Soul Eater amazing and I'd never seen anything like it before, it also led me to being put on to some amazing stuff, such as Devil May Cry 3. And when I was put on to Devil May Cry 3, I didn't even know games like that existed. It completely blew my mind. So by proxy of that, I went looking for games that were similar to it in the sense of combat or just sequencing of the game, and I found God of War 3. And by an offshoot of being put onto God of War 3, I became interested in Greek mythology. And by a crazy, insane stroke of luck, one day while I was looking up something regarding Greek mythology, I misspelled it and it ended up autofilling mythos, leading me to the Lovecraftian mythos. That immediately had me wanting to get tapped in with Eldritch Beasts, which pipelined into me getting tapped in with Kaijus, which led me on a deep dive down Godzilla, which then eventually led me on a pipeline down to seeing a lot of mecha anime like Evangelion and Gundam, which then led me to watching Alita Battle Angel and Ghost in the Shell. After that, I became interested in back around back to Green Light. I had to watch the Right Coop, and I saw Then that leads us back to here at this exact moment. Everything is by chance if you believe in chance, and chances are you do. So, we just got lucky. Everything is everything. Your takeaways from your likes and interests or just past experiences shape up everything that you have, like your friends or friend group, for example. Think about if you didn't share a common interest in a certain thing that you like or didn't share a passion for a specific thing or craft, then chances are you likely wouldn't mesh with them as well, or you just wouldn't meet them in the first place. Then when you think about that and start thinking about how you stumbled upon that specific thing that you like, right? You start seeing how everything eventually branches together in one way or another. The generational pipeline. Mine just so happened to be anime, so thanks, Mom, for buying Dragon Ball GT on the VHS, even if it didn't work. Bro, it's so hard to sound like super serious and introspective when you don't have a script, but it is super fun though. And that leads us to the next section of the video, my personal favorite section of the video, the part of the video where I put you onto some new songs, bands, or just artists in general that you may have not heard of to spice up your palette a little bit, or just give you a break from listening to the same old stuff over and over again in case you're bored of it. And we're not gonna waste any time this time around. First up, we got Sledges. This is a heavy gaze band from San Diego, and they sit at like 20K listeners on Spotify at this current moment, and I actually think that's pretty good for what it's worth. And I'm not gonna lie, bro, I don't see many heavy gaze oriented bands nowadays. Like usually when I do hear heavy gaze, it's like a band or an artist like just experimenting, trying something different, but they never lean fully into the sound and they don't make like a full project of just that sound. So if you know any more heavy gaze bands, feel free to put me on in the comment section. But this band right here, this band is special. They dropped the EP recently called Losing Pace, and I'm not gonna lie, every song is a hit. But the song that I like the most from it is Stumbling As I Fall. It starts off in typical heavy metal fashion. It just doesn't have like a drum countdown in the beginning, but then when it drops, you really hear where the shoegaze elements come in, because you can hear that ambient verb on that guitar and your classic crunchy shoegaze vocals. Perfectly genre, bro. It's heavy gaze. But what stood out to me with this song, right, is near the end, right, there's a break from like the little heavy gaze drop, and it goes into like this more of like indie sound, but when the guitar comes in, it's just all grunge, and that type of experimentation is just stellar, bro. So 100% give this one a listen, and you might as well give the entire EP a listen. And next up, we got my GOAT, It's Brokey. Nah, I'm just playing, bro, but all jokes aside, shout out to Brokey, bro. Her music is absolutely certified. Low-key the best in the underground right now, but I ain't gonna say too much. But seriously though, next up we got School Food Punishment, and we're gonna get straight to it, bro. They have a song called You May Crawl, and my nigga, this song is peak, bro. Like, no exaggeration, bro. The progressions, the drops, like, bro, of course they have like that little guitar tap like riff, and it just sounds so pleasing to the ear, and her vocals are stellar, but like when they get to that drop, bro, it's like you're ascending to an ethereal plane, bro. It's like I'm playing Hollow Knight and I'm about to fight Absolute Radiance for the first time. And then out of the drop immediately turns into a build-up back into a guitar riff. Like, what? You build up into the drop, right? Then turn the drop into another build up for a drop, and then use that drop to build up back into the verse, bro. Like, you can't teach musicality like that. And then when you get to the second drop, it goes into gear second, bro. Instead of doing what the first one did with the ambient, like ethereal feel, they just bring every instrument right in together on top of her beautiful vocals. Immediate, instant top 20, no, not top 20, not even top 15, top 10 song of all time that I've ever heard. And I've heard a lot of music, so that's saying something. This is the song that plays after you beat Omega Shenron on Budokai 3 on Z difficulty. This is the song that plays when you complete Bloody Palace on Devil May Cry 5. This is the song that plays after you get ending E on Nier Automata. This is the song that plays when you fight Ishin the Sword Saint on Sekiro. My nigga, I can't glaze this song enough. Just go listen to it. Stop everything you're doing, go listen to the song, then come back to me. Next up, we got a band that almost everybody knows, bro, but they dropped a new album recently and it was so good, so I felt like it'd be like wrong for me not to include it in this video. We got Bring Me the Horizon. The name of the album is Post-Human Next Gen, and to be honest with you, there are no skips on this album. I can make a 10-hour-long video on this album alone, and I can make a 4-hour-long video on 2 songs from this album alone, bro. My personal favorite song from this album is Kool-Aid, but instead of explaining in boring detail just how great this album is, I'll leave you with this explanation instead. When I listened to this album full way through in VC with my friends for the first time, I genuinely thought I was listening to the leaked OST for Devil May Cry 6. My voice sounds relatively calm right now, but that's just due to the fact that if I raised it any higher, you'd hear me glaze this album for the remainder of this video. But sadly, I can't do that because I have an outro to do. And if you made it this far in the video, I appreciate you, gang. More than I'm ever willing to tell. So with that, could I interest you in joining the official Canon Discord server? Link in the description. We have crab legs. And with the release of Sparking Zero finally here, you best believe there will be a tourney very, very soon. And I will be taking souls, or not. I still haven't decided if I want to commentate with my twin Ob yet, but be on the lookout because things are heating up. Ranked mode in Sparking Zero pisses me off so much though, bro. Like, I demoted this morning from A1 down to A3 because I keep running into Yajirobis. They keep spamming.
Up in here with my tool, they gon' find you in the ditch, yeah. Straight for high rule, you not from it, you a glitch, yeah. Man of my rules, running with the misfits, yeah. Do not misclick, that's gon' get you hit quick, yeah. Death on death, it's God, ain't no variation, it's Lord, I keep prepared, I saw